Michael stood alone in a circle of corpses, each one having a charred, gaping hole in their torsos. Seeing such a macabre image would make anyone feel chills running up and down their spines. The speed, ease, and surgical precision in which he dispatched of these magnetics was harrowing. 20 lives were gone, just like that. Even the most hardened killers would feel a little bit of guilt in their hearts. But not Michael. Somehow he felt fine. It was as if ruthlessly killing these people weren't a crime against humanity. Felt like justice. Michael! Suddenly, ChatJK5's voice brought him out of his reverie. He shook his head, his body shivering. What the hell? He didn't think he would have these kinds of thoughts after killing 20 people in cold blood. That wasn't normal. It shouldn't be this easy for him to kill people. He shouldn't be this okay with it. But he was. He didn't know why, but he didn't feel a speck of culpability in depriving someone of their sons and daughters. Why do I think like this? What's wrong with me? He looked at his hands, tidy and clean. But it shouldn't. It should have been drowning in blood. Yet, his conscience was as speckless as the clothes on his body. Michael! Michael! He grabbed his head, as if he was trying to force himself to feel pain, to feel any semblance of sensation after such savage killings. Why do I feel this way? From his very first interaction with the Frick and the Fostil Company, he hadn't been feeling the same way. He was more aggressive, more proactive, more ferocious. He was normally a careful person, someone who wouldn't just willingly set himself up for a trap. He would have asked his friends, the mermen, anyone, for help to ensure his safety. But he didn't. He felt that it was his own responsibility to hunt these people by himself. They were his prey, and he was going to hunt them at all costs. It was uncharacteristic of him to be this feral. Something was wrong. Michael! ChatJK5 took over his vision with a pop-up window, taking his attention. He whipped his head forward, realizing that something has changed in his environment. Corpses were supposed to be as motionless and immobile as the stones in the ground. Yet right in front of his eyes, he saw their limbs move, twitching, as they moved horridly out of their normal range of motions. Their bodies moved and bent with an unknown force, dislocating their joints. Slowly, these undead creatures propped themselves off the ground, their eyes unfocused and gray like a dead fish. What the hell? Even in a fantasy world, Michael never thought he'd see zombies in the flesh. But now, these revenant abominations were slowly trudging their feet towards him, as if they wanted to eat his brains. He didn't even know how that was possible. He killed them. Their bodies were now devoid of light mana, the very thing that makes a living thing a living thing. Michael, look at their hearts. Upon using his drone vision to peer through their hearts, his eyes widened. Their hearts, or more specifically, their God-forged pieces, were now glowing blue. The heat that was supposed to represent the ability power coursing through their bodies were non-existent, seemingly replaced by something that was the complete opposite of it. But somehow, it was still ability power. It still emanated a strength that defied reality. He could see the metallic luster of a God-forged piece on their chests slightly peeking out from the charred hole made by his drone's Unity gun. None of these were making sense, especially once he looked at all of their abilities. When he first saw them, he didn't even bother reading the descriptions of their powers. Not only was he still in a fugue state of aggression, but he also didn't need to. They were only in the first to third stage of body formation after all, meaning they would be susceptible to his powers, and he'd be invulnerable to theirs. But now, this strange situation made an investigation necessary. Frick. 5th stage body formation realm. Talent. Artificial strength. Ability power. The user gains an enormous amount of power that exceeds that of normal means, transcending even death itself. That's not what it was before. He was sure that Frick's ability power wasn't like that before. But that wasn't the only thing different. Even his cultivation has changed, now in the 5th stage, one stage higher than when he was alive. He looked around the 19 other zombies walking towards him, and what he saw confused him even more. Unnamed. 4th stage body formation realm. Talent. artificial strength. Ability power. The user gains an enormous amount of power. All of them had the same talent and ability power. They all also gained a significant cultivation boost, becoming one stage higher than before. What the hell is going on? And before he could even get an answer to his question, Frick's zombified body lunged at him, its hands blurring as it aimed straight for Michael's heart. At the same time, the 19 other zombies charged at him, all their hands outstretched towards his chest. It seemed that these zombies weren't after his brain, but his heart instead. And suddenly, as if a switch had flipped into his mind, his psyche returned to that animalistic, savage state he was before. When he looked at these zombies, he scowled. They were repulsive to him. Them being in close proximity to him almost made him retch. He pointed his hand at Frick, and immediately, 16 mini-drones hiding in the trees showed themselves, the barrels on their undersides glowing incandescent. Unity beams shot straight at the zombified ninja corpses around him, aimed straight for their heads. Brain matter and skull fragments exploded into the air, with most of it being incinerated upon contact with the beam. But still, the zombies moved towards Michael as if he hadn't just decapitated them. Disgusting. He didn't even want to use his own powers to dispose of these creatures. With a single command, his mini-drones moved. One of them suddenly buzzed with blue electricity, its propellers imbued with supernatural and reality-defying speed. This was Jaku's ability used by his mini-drone. Finally, the drone's costly upgrades showed its worth. The ability upgrade on the Allies section of the drone shop allowed him to use the Dragonborn's powers for himself, and this was the first time he was going to be using it in real time. The mini-drone flashed through the air, leaving behind a streak of blue lightning in its wake. It charged towards the headless Frick, ramming its frame to its chest and pushing it away from Michael. The drone flew in a circle, deterring any of these zombies from coming close to him. One of them tried to catch the annoying little drone, only to find its hand cut off and charred from its stump. That's what happens when touching solid lightning itself. These zombie creatures, each one having cultivations in the second, third, and fourth stages, were unable to keep up with the mini-drone. Despite its source coming from Jaku, a first-stage magnetic, being wielded by Michael seemed to have upped its strength proportionate to his own. The only one who seemed to keep up with the lightning-fast mini-drone was Frick's headless body. Unlike the other zombies, it remained unaffected even after being rammed by the drone. It limped forwards, hand bent backwards as it tried to catch the mini-drone and crush it with its fifth-stage strength. But just as it was about to grasp the lightning-imbued drone, another drone flew forwards and intercepted the zombie's hand. And upon contact, Frick's hands ricocheted backwards, almost separating it from its shoulder joints. The new mini-drone faced the zombie, its entire body emanating a powerful, stalwart green energy. This drone had Umisu's ability, allowing it to have a Herculean physical strength. And despite having the same power, it seemed that the zombie's ability power got completely outclassed. Meanwhile, as all of this was happening, the other drones kept firing at the zombies, inundating their bodies with burned and charred holes. But even if their bodies were mangled beyond recognition, they still remained standing with an inexorable hunger for Michael's heart. They limped, hopped, and crawled towards him with seemingly no signs of stopping. They only stopped moving once most of their bodies got completely incinerated by the Unity beams. But even so, the charred pieces of torso wriggled on the ground, still trying to come close to him. It was an abomination. Now, the only one remaining was Frick's zombified body. It was currently lying on the ground, being battered relentlessly by a mini-drone emanating a green, almost nature-like glow. Michael approached it, a look of distaste in his face. It became clear that these monstrosities would never die until their Godforge pieces were removed. He raised his hands, beckoning all of the Godforge pieces around him to exit their vessels and unite with him. An instant later, a metallic drop perspired out of Frick's chest, instantly becoming engulfed in a white fire before shooting towards Michael. The other bodies started releasing their own drops as well in quick succession. Totaled to a few more drops, and nothing else. Michael stared at the Godforge pieces in front of him. These were barely 5 kilograms worth. Frick's cultivation alone should have given him at least 10 or 15 kilograms. He wasn't sure. The man's cultivation changed from the 4th stage to the 5th stage after his death after all. But still, it shouldn't have given him only half. The other ambushers may have had a low cultivation, but they still had a few kilograms on their body at least. And since there were 20 of them in total, they should have netted him more than 50 kilograms worth of Godforge pieces. But in reality, he only got a fraction of it. He glanced at Frick's chest, peering through the hole leading straight to his heart. And there, he saw the unmistakable glimmer of a Godforge piece. And even when using his drone vision, he still saw a glow in their chests, albeit the dark bluish one that these zombies had. What's going on? Why can't I attract those Godforge pieces? This wasn't the first time this happened. When he defeated those hooded figures trying to swindle the vampires, they also released a disproportionate amount of Godforge pieces after their death. And according to Harbinger, it was because they were impure, which meant that they aren't Godforge pieces. Harbinger's words sent a shockwave through his mind. It's as if the disparate clues he'd been seeing were finally clicking into place. Despite acting and looking like Godforge pieces, these metallic objects were not the real thing. They were only intended to look like it. He finally understood why he felt such a strange, hunter-like mindset whenever he looked at Frick and his cohorts. It was his subconscious telling him that there was something wrong with their Godforge pieces, that there was something sinister imitating it in its place. He felt repulsed at these counterfeit pieces as much as the real ones were attracted to him. He looked back at Frick's zombified body. It was now crawling away from him, its headless body shivering at his mere presence. It seemed that it finally realized it had been trying to hunt its own predator all this time. Michael moved towards it, his eyes focused on the fake Godforge piece. He needed to have it, study it, figure out what it was, and destroy every single bit of it from the face of the earth. As if figuring out his motives, the zombie tried to crawl faster, but at that instant its body froze in place. A devilish shadow formed underneath its body, seizing control of its movements. This was Fudge's ability, wielded by a mini drone perched atop the stump of the zombie's decapitated head. Michael stretched his hand, intending to wrench the fake out of the zombie's chest. But just then, he felt a subtle shockwave emanate from the zombies, followed by the fake Godforge pieces glowing brighter and brighter by the instant. It was going to explode. Michael had experimented with enough unity to know when something was about to explode. And these fake Godforge pieces were exhibiting the same signs of an atomic-like eruption that would destroy everything in a 100-meter radius, at the very least. And there were around 20 of them here in close proximity to him. Not only that, but despite these things being counterfeit, they still emanated a reality-defying strength almost indistinguishable from ability power. Suffice it to say, this was dangerous. But Michael wasn't going to let this opportunity pass him by. He needed to know what this is. With this time bomb ticking down right in front of his face, Michael moved closer to the zombie, kneeled down on the ground, and wrenched the foreboding item from its chest. Blood, viscera, and shattered bones dripping down from his hands. Michael looked at the supposed Godforge piece. It was cold, icy. Frost would have permeated through his hands if it weren't for the absolute unity defense protecting him. In comparison, the real Godforge piece was infernally hot and would have burned through anything that came into contact with it. It was black, anthracite-like, and resembled glassy obsidian more like a metal. Squarely fitting on his palms, he raised his hand with almost no resistance. Whatever this was, it wasn't weighty like the real one. One thing was clear. This looked like the complete antithesis of a Godforge piece. While he was taking his time observing this curio with unhidden contempt and disgust in his eyes, the object started to amp up in its state of agitation. Mist emanated out of the glass-like core, like smoke coming from a bomb. Anyone who saw this would definitely know that the thing was about to explode. But strangely enough, it was still a few seconds away from its eruption. It's as if that was on purpose. It's as if the object itself was giving him a chance to escape out of the blast zone and leave the bomb alone. Haha! It was quite interesting. This escalation was only happening after he grabbed the object from the zombie's chest. Michael had a feeling that this was something of a failsafe, something that would only trigger if someone else obtained it without permission. Whatever this is or whoever installed it on these people wanted to keep this object a secret at all costs, either by destroying it and everyone around it in a flurry of explosions, or scare them enough to leave it alone so that it could be retrieved by someone else at a later date. This aspect alone made him realize that this was deliberate. Someone did this. Simultaneously intrigued and angered at this conspiracy, Michael let the frozen mist linger. Once it was sure that Michael wasn't going to let it go, the object started to glow from the inside, just mere moments away from exploding. And like a falling domino, the other dismembered torsos of the zombies began glowing white from the inside. Okay, that's enough. Michael raised his other hand and attached a switch on the fake in his hand. Meanwhile, the other mini-drones began dropping switches on the zombies like army supplies, freezing them all in time. Seeing this, Michael couldn't help but scoff. There was a reason why Michael had never heard of this fake Godforge piece before. Whoever kept this a secret made damn well sure that no one was going to ever find out about it. Anyone who stumbled upon it either blew up or would have no evidence it even existed. But they never knew that someone would be able to stop time like he could, or be able to defeat 20 magnetics in the first place. He raised his hand, using magic to levitate all these dubious objects into the air. He moved them all closer together, the little shards of glass-like stones immediately sticking to one another as soon as they got close to one another. They became a big, seamless iceberg in the air, its size as large as a melon. This was in their hearts, replacing Godforge pieces. Finally, it was starting to make sense. This forgery was the reason why they had so little Godforge pieces in their hearts. Somehow, it acted as a substitution for the real thing. And for some reason, it worked. Even with his drone's new upgraded vision, it identified them as a real, authentic magnetic. But in truth, Frick only had the equivalent of 3 kilograms of Godforge piece in his heart, enough for the second stage of the body formation realm. And the 19 other magnetics had even less than that. All in all, they had about 2 kilograms among them in total. This was crazy. On average, they would have only had 0.1 kilograms each. Yet, they were able to have a cultivation equal to that of a first stage to a third stage magnetic. How is this even possible? What even is this? I'm unable to recognize its origin. Further analysis is needed. It's not a Godforge piece, that's for sure. It will never be. Somehow, Michael felt an inherent responsibility to unearth this horrible scheme, this unnatural attempt to replace a Godforge piece and purge it out of this world. But for him to do that, he needed to find out what it was, why it works, and who was responsible for it. I need to investigate this faux still company. Seeing as their entire magnetic lineup were proudly using this abomination, it was safe to say that they were implicit in whatever conspiracy was happening under everyone's noses. But first, he had to make sure not to startle them. He had to make it seem as if he wasn't investigating them in the first place, or else they might get spooked and heighten their defenses even more. He looked around himself, seeing the forest ground rife with burn marks that came from his mini-drones. Unity guns. That was evidence. He had no doubt in his mind that the people responsible were going to embark on an investigation as to why these 20 people disappeared. So he had to bury his tracks. Michael looked at his open palm and decisively closed it, as if crushing something in his grasp. A bright, prismatic light emanated from the cracks in between his fingers. Right at this very moment, he was using immense pressure to crush down all 8 mana elements in his palms, condensing them to a single point. After a while, he opened his palms, revealing a solid crystal made out of unity. This was simultaneously a battery and a bomb, with the only difference being its size. With a perfectly small and adequate size, it was an infinite power source. But make it big enough it could level an entire city. Right now, he held unity the size of a small grape. Once he threw this crystal into the ground, it would erupt in an explosion that destroyed everything within a half-kilometer diameter. He wanted to emulate what would have happened if the fake Godforge pieces had successfully exploded all by themselves. That way, they wouldn't be suspicious that someone else got a hold of it. With one last look at the dismembered, charred, and macabre remains of the zombies around him, Michael tossed the Unity crystal into the air high up in the air. It broke through the leafy foliage of the forest before it finally fell back on the ground at the same place Michael tossed it, except this time he was gone. The Unity crystal crashed into hard soil, turning the crystal into a prismatic incandescence. Half an instant later, the entire forest erupted into a bright white light, destroying everything in its path. Michael arrived back into the nation of Reborn, with the fake Godforge pieces floating beside him. He was extremely eager to experiment on this little artifact. And he wasn't the only one. Would it be possible for me to conduct this experiment? Sure, he immediately agreed. He was going to have her take charge anyway. She was the brains of Reborn, after all. Do you have any ideas? Positive. In the brief moments that you were in close proximity to the zombie, I took it upon myself to study their physical bodies. And what did you find? These fakes were installed in the same place as the real Godforge pieces. Somehow, this item was able to give them the equivalent cultivation that a Godforge piece would have given them. Everyone knew that Godforge pieces were limited in quantity. It was finite. Every single one in circulation came from the original Godforge that mysteriously shattered during the ancient era. Because of this, Godforge pieces were extremely costly. Only the elites of the elite could afford them. Cost 10,000 sand dollars each kilogram, to be exact. The normal person wouldn't even be able to get that much in their lifetime, and that would just be enough to get them to the first stage of body formation. But everyone was okay with this exorbitant price because there was no alternative. You could only gain a diva and an ability power through Godforge pieces. Unless there was something else. Michael didn't know how these fakes were found, but he would reckon that they were a lot more abundant than Godforge pieces. The fact that the Fostil company was able to transform 20 people into magnetics said a lot about the fake's rarity. But if this were true, then why was it still unknown? Why would they keep it a secret? If people found out that Godforge pieces weren't the only way they could achieve demigodhood, then they would immediately turn their focus on this new alternative. Prices of Godforge pieces would plummet, while this new object would match its value, making it a win for the Fostil company. But they didn't. They chose secrecy instead of earning billions of sand dollars. Why? Michael wouldn't find the answer unless he sought out the people behind Frick and the Fostil company. But it seemed that ChatJK5 had a clue. The subjects' hearts were in a decline. What do you mean by that? Their heartbeats are weaker than normal. During times of great stress, a person's heart would naturally increase its activity to provide the human with an excess of energy, even more so for magnetics. Their hearts exceed normal pace, reaching up to 200 beats a minute at the very least. But these people were the complete opposite. From the start, their heartbeats were on the lower side, about 30 to 40 beats a minute. But once they activated their ability powers, that number dropped drastically, reaching single digits. No wonder their hearts looked cold and listless in his drone vision. They weren't pumping. Instead of Godforge pieces making someone more lively, this fake one made them more dead instead. It finally made sense how they were able to move despite being killed by him. It's because they were already technically dead even before he shot them with his Unity gun. Somehow, this fake could make the cold, lifeless body move as if it was still alive. A zombie. The reason for its obscurity showed itself. Knowing that one's own heart would stop beating after using this fake would certainly creep a lot of people out. It was very unnatural. Godforge pieces could defy reality, but it couldn't bring back the dead. Yet this one could. One could certainly wonder if this was a gift or a curse. It was certainly divisive. He could see some people being okay with it, and some people think that it was an abomination. He was part of the latter. The only way to see the item's true effects is if we test it on a living being. What? Michael couldn't do that to someone. He couldn't ask them to endanger their lives for a little experiment. Even if they volunteered, he would still say no. I also feel repulsed at the thought. But what if they weren't alive? He raised his eyebrows. You mean, positive. The Unity clones will be the perfect subjects for this experiment. It was possible that there were a lot of insidious side effects in using this Godforge piece replacement. Something about it told him that having to turn yourself cold and half-dead couldn't be healthy in the long run. Not only that, but those zombies were as lifeless and as brainless as fantasy depicted them to be. They weren't really alive in a sense. Their bodies were just moving instinctively. And somehow, being in this zombified state made their instincts try to savagely take other people's hearts. When the zombies were after him, their dead, gray, hazy eyes were intently focused on his chest, as if they had a fervid need for the source of power in his body. Now, he didn't know if they wanted his heart specifically, or just any heart in general. He was special, after all. He wasn't just a magnetic, he was a natural one at that. In any case, having those zombies run amok in the world would sow chaos and destruction anywhere they touched. It would be apocalyptic. He didn't know how many people had this fake on their hearts. It could be that only the Fostil company had it in their possession, or they were just one of many. There could be an entire black market surrounding this Godforge piece alternative that was rife all around the world. It was a little bit concerning that he couldn't tell the difference between the real one or the fake one. While they were alive, they showed no visible sign of having something fake in their hearts. They moved and acted like a normal magnetic, defying reality and all. Even his drone's magnetic vision couldn't tell the difference. Well, I guess I could tell. He remembered that repulsive feeling he got just from glancing at Frick and his cohorts. Whenever they were in his presence, they triggered something feral within him, something that urged him to dispose of them as soon as possible. As unscientific as it was, that feeling was his only guidance in trying to find more undercover zombies like Frick. The software wasn't aware of the possibility of a fake, ChatJK5 said decisively. It seemed that she blamed herself for not realizing that something was wrong in the first place. Once I have fully studied the effects of this fake, I can change the coding on the drone's vision to search for possible indications. It made sense why she was so enthusiastic in experimenting with the fake Godforge pieces. Are you sure this is safe? Won't the clones get affected by whatever is inside the fakes? That self-destructing mechanism didn't seem natural. It felt purposeful. Because of that, there was good reason to believe that there were other hidden operations inside that could negatively affect the person who had it. We precisely want that to happen. The Unity clones are entirely under your control. Yours and yours only. Any alterations that the fake Godforge piece would make inside the clone's body can be easily destroyed and countered with one simple thought of yours. Michael nodded, finally understanding ChatJK5's confidence in the experiment. After all, she was right. His Unity clones were made out of, well, Unity. And Unity was made up of all the 8 mana elements combined. And using his supreme talent, there was no mana in the world that wouldn't obey under his instructions. If an insidious, virus-like side effect corrupted the Unity clone during the experiment, not only would it be immediately rendered inert, but it would also give ChatJK5 a chance to analyze it in its entirety, thereby giving way to the possibility that she could somehow figure out the fake's origins. After thinking about it some more, Michael eventually relented. He was originally a little bit skeptical, but ChatJK5 successfully convinced him. He figured out that he should set aside his repulsive feelings about the fake, and instead treat it as a didactic carcass. Something to dissect and study rather than something to stow away, rotting in his inventory. Another reason was that he didn't want the fake to interact with the mysterious pearl. He had enough unwanted reactions for now. So, he immediately recalled all 5 of his Unity clones to his side. They ascended from his split shadows, kneeling as they greeted him. It was Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. Alpha, come forward. You're going to have to be our test subject. This was an easy decision. After all, she was the only one who was still a mortal amongst his Unity clones. Bravo was in the first stage while the rest were in the third stage. In case something bad happened, which he was pretty sure it won't, then he'd only lose one clone. Despite his cold and calculating reason for this choice, Alpha obediently walked forward and offered her hands to him. It was a little bit weird treating Alpha as an experiment, but he had to remind himself that she was a clone. He was basically experimenting on himself, which made the questionable moral ethics of the whole situation a little bit easier to swallow. He opened his palm, summoning a rectangular shadow above it. Then, a black glass-like iceberg ascended from the depths of his shadow inventory. Once presented with this strange curio, Alpha closed her eyes. His Unity clone opened herself up to ChatJK5's control. Immediately, a glowing split appeared from the bottom of her neck down to her torso. Wind and an invisible pressure billowed out of her as Unity began to unleash its destructive capabilities. Covering his face with his hands, he willed the black iceberg towards Alpha. It floated forwards, fighting against the expulsive gravity of Unity. This thing would have immediately flown backwards if it weren't for Michael's powers. Because of his control, the fake Godforge piece entered into the glowing split in Alpha's body, seamlessly disappearing into her body as it entered. Once the entirety of the black iceberg embedded itself on Alpha's Unity heart, the split mended itself back together, mending the solemn look on his clone's face. But that didn't last long. Immediately, Alpha's eyes widened as if something had seized her heart. It was turning her whole body unstable, with wisps of Unity threads beginning to unravel from her edges. What's happening to her? The object is trying to assimilate the Unity clone. Inside Alpha's body, the black iceberg had made a permanent home around her heart. Surrounded it, no, infested it was the right word. Black, tenebrous tendrils began to unravel within the iceberg, slowly spreading around her heart, turning it into an overgrown, decaying, black-dyed vineyard in just a few seconds. Just as expected, the object was trying to take over Alpha's heart. It tried to take over all the veins, the valves, and chambers inside and began trying to replace it with its own form. As Alpha's face contorted into a grimace, Michael frowned. Black veins under her skin started to appear around her eyes, squiggling and squirming as it slowly started to spread around her face. He bit his nails, trying to ease himself from aborting the mission. Both he and ChatJK5 expected some kind of negative reaction from the get-go. They knew that the fake Godforge piece had to insert itself some way inside her heart, either by force or through assimilation. But what they didn't expect was that this virus was spreading outwards as well. It began to spread around her limbs, to her head, and even to her brain. Godforge pieces only affected the heart. But this knockoff permeated throughout the entire body, taking it over with its tenebrous, Stygian tendrils. Experiment Alpha. The subject experienced great change within her body. It is taking over not only her heart, but her mind as well. The effects of this hostile acquisition is not yet clear, but it can be concluded that it is not safe or beneficial to its user. Alpha's skin began to shrivel like dried grapes, turning her gaunt and sickly. Somehow, the fake Godforge pieces inside her was desiccating her from the inside, taking in all the moisture and using it for its own nefarious purposes. What's happening? The object is turning the subject's brain into mush, decreasing its usage. This will turn Alpha into a more pliable, more suggestible character. In exchange for obtaining ability powers without having to spend thousands of sand dollars, someone would have to pay the price of becoming someone's slave. No wonder those people from the Faux Still Company acted so morose. It wasn't that they were ill-tempered, it was because their brains had been taken over and destroyed their free speech. They acted like mindless bodies because they were. The only one who acted like a normal human was Frick. And coincidentally, Frick was the only one who still had Godforge pieces in his heart. He had about 5 kilograms worth, while the rest of them had none. Using only the fake Godforge would destroy your brain, but adding in the real one would allow them to retain their sanity. It can be concluded that the more fake pieces you put into your body, the more destroyed your brain will become. He could see a lot of magnetics still becoming tempted with this despite the obvious, glaring side effects. After all, cultivating a diva became harder as they went up higher in stages. If one wanted to become a 9th stage magnetic, they would need a total of 45 kilos of Godforge pieces in their hearts. Now, many could realistically achieve the 5th stage of body formation as long as they worked hard and saved up their sand dollars. But once they got to the 7th, 8th, and 9th, it was like a financial hellhole that they could never hope to achieve, especially if they weren't part of the 0.001% elite of the elites. But what if they used this fake one instead? If someone came up to a person stuck in the 6th stage for 10 years with the proposition of them becoming a 7th or 8th stage magnetic for a really low price, then they would definitely take it without hesitation. Even if they told them about its side effects, many would still take it. If they only used a small amount of the fake Godforge pieces, then the effects on their mind would be minimal. But that was where human greed and stupidity came into play. Perhaps they weren't satisfied with their new cultivation and wanted more. And since the effects didn't seem all that bad, they wouldn't think for a second and ask for more. And as they continued to corrupt themselves with this fake Godforge piece, their minds would slowly get contaminated, influencing their decisions outright. This must be stopped. He was convinced now more than ever that this object should be purged from existence. This is enough, ChatJK5. Let's purge the virus. As you wish. With the experiment over, ChatJK5 finished her analysis and began to re-engage the Unity clone's defenses. Immediately, the black tendrils pervading Alpha's body, mind, and heart erupted in a white, holy fire from the inside. The tendrils retracted, trying to find solace and comfort back into the black iceberg that surrounded Alpha's heart. But how could it hide? Everything inside Alpha's body was Unity itself. And under the purview of this destructive, chaotic, and overpowering fire, nothing could survive. Alpha's body was engulfed in a prismatic light, her face morphing gently into relief as the black veins spreading around her eyes dissipated into nothingness. Inside her heart, the black iceberg shivered under the assault of Unity. It began to melt, perspiring black liquid that immediately vaporized under the prismatic fire. The iceberg began to shrink smaller and smaller, before eventually, the last layer of its shiny black luster was incinerated. Bathed in Unity, the black iceberg shed off its nefarious, black shell and revealed its true nature. What was left was a connection of cubed crystals, with a colorful, almost prismatic-like luster similar to that of a solid bismuth. Michael stared at this new material, when all of a sudden, an invisible pressure emanated out of Alpha. She was brimming with power. Alpha began to exhibit the same signs of a magnetic awakening. Her entire body, figure, and form was brimming with ability power. It was as if there was a volcano inside her, currently in the nascent stage of its eruption with plumes of smoke billowing to the skies, ground underneath quaking, and lava just spewing out at the mouth. His eyes widened. This didn't feel like the same power that the zombies exhibited during their outburst. This one felt alive, and as he looked at Alpha using his drone vision, his guess turned out correct. Her heart was red-hot, fervidly incandescent, almost blinding him as he looked. It's different. It's becoming more and more like a real Godforge piece. It's exhibiting the same signs of ability power. While he was in a state of reverie at that wondrous implication, his absolute Unity defense suddenly activated, creating a prismatic shield that prevented him from getting harmed. Harmed? Harmed from what? For a brief second, he deactivated his defenses, letting himself become vulnerable. Immediately, heat scorched his skin. If it wasn't for his natural defenses as a 7th stage magnetic, he would have immediately gotten 2nd-degree burns. He stepped back, realizing that the heat of her outburst was a little bit too powerful. It's even more powerful than mine. He couldn't believe it. The accumulation of power inside Alpha had reached even beyond his own limits. During an awakening, it was normal for ability power to surge even more than normal. But this went above and beyond that. It surpassed the 7th stage of body formation, reaching the 8th and kept on climbing even to the 9th stage. It had reached the power equivalent to a 9th stage magnetic. This stunned him into silence. He would have never thought that this little experiment would allow his Unity clone to reach the peak of the body formation realm. How is this possible? He looked up at Alpha's head, trying to see if there was a vague image of a diva forming as a result of her breakthrough. But no matter how much he looked, he could see no ethereal form gathering above her body. Even his drone vision saw nothing. She has no diva, but she has the same intensity of ability power as a 9th stage magnetic. This was a mind-blowing miracle. Michael couldn't even begin to comprehend how this was at all possible. But it seemed that his shock wouldn't end there. Alpha's body erupted in a white fire. Her unity began to unravel once again, as threads of mana that made up her body started to unravel. It looked as if she was on the verge of disassembly. The very power that was coursing through her body was also disassembling the very magic theory that kept her intact. This would have been cause for concern, but Michael couldn't focus on that. The ever-growing power in Alpha's body continued to rise beyond even that of a ninth-stage magnetic. Nascent. Before Michael could even finish that thought, Alpha was engulfed in a blinding white light, forcing Michael to close his eyes. While his vision was impaired, he could feel a tangible pressure striking him from the front, like he was standing in the middle of a bomb's explosion. It was only when that onslaught ended did he finally feel safe to open his eyes. Once his vision returned, he saw Alpha standing right in front of him, showing a solemn, content, and almost happy expression on her face. She was currently glowing a yellowish-white glow, coming from the very thin layer of prismatic fire that was draped over her skin like a veil of armor fit only for a holy maiden warrior. Even ChatJK5 was at a loss for words. The only one currently having fun was Harbinger, who was laughing at the irony of the whole situation. Coo. Looks like your clone got to the nascent spirit realm faster than you. Michael's perception of her strength wasn't wrong. The ability power emanating from Alpha was the same intensity as a nascent spirit magnetic. He was sure of it. She emanated the same invisible, overbearing pressure as Alaric during the auction. It was the kind of power that was so intense, so focused and condensed that it was turning tangible. For Alaric and other magnetics in the nascent spirit realm, this manifested as their diva taking corporeal form. But for Alpha, it seemed that this allowed her unity to show as a veil of armor around herself. Is she really in the nascent spirit realm? It didn't seem at all possible. But then he remembered. He combined all 20 zombies' fake Godforge pieces into one giant black glass-like iceberg. And since their cultivations were ranging from the first stage to the third stage, then once all of those were combined, then it would have been the equivalent to about more or less 50 kilograms of Godforge pieces. It only took a total of 45 kilos to go from first stage to the ninth stage, so it was conceivable for Alpha to break through. Wait, it's not that simple. You can't just implement Godforge pieces all at once. First of all, he knew that all magnetics underwent a difficult bottleneck whenever they reached the peak of body formation. According to different accounts, the prerequisite to become a nascent spirit was a complete understanding of one's own diva to the fullest extent. This was extremely hard for most, and became a barrier that most couldn't overcome during their lifetime. But once they achieved unity with their divas, they would undergo a significant internal change akin to being birthed anew like a phoenix. But Alpha didn't even have a diva. Not only that, but she didn't even have an ability power of her own. A magnetic learned their powers throughout the course of their cultivation, usually in the third, sixth, and ninth stages. Alpha, being a unity clone and all, didn't have her own power. She had no soul, no personality, and no talent to draw that power from. But despite breaking all those rules, she still managed to achieve a realm most magnetics couldn't even touch. The intensity of Alpha's power was unmistakable. She was in the nascent spirit realm, right? Michael wasn't a nascent spirit cultivator himself, but although her powers exhibited the same signs as one, he felt that there was something different with Alpha's cultivation. He just couldn't describe it. Her power is in the nascent spirit realm, Harbinger confirmed. But it's shallow and stumped. What do you mean by that? She can manifest a power equivalent to a first-stage nascent spirit being, and only that. It's her limit. He frowned at Harbinger's explanation. You mean she can't ever advance to the next stage? No. Her powers are now completely stuck in the first-stage nascent spirit realm. In fact, that's not the only thing she can't achieve, but that's a conversation for another time. All you have to know is that she's only a nascent spirit cultivator in name. She can never be truly one herself, for the same reason that she can never truly be human. She's just a clone. In a pure battle of quantity and intensity of ability powers, Alpha can match against any first-stage nascent spirit cultivator. But fights in that stage weren't that simple. Synergy between diva and magnetic play a decisive role and could sometimes even overcome stage differences entirely. With Alpha having no diva to synergize with, her battle tactics had a lot left to be desired. This meant that in a battle against a real nascent spirit cultivator, she was unlikely to triumph against them. She could certainly survive or prolong a fight, but she could never really defeat them, at least not a seasoned cultivator. Her only chance of winning against a nascent spirit cultivator is if they're fighting someone who is still not used to their powers. Then, and maybe then, can she use her ability power to ambush and steal a win against them. Now, this seemed like a serious caveat for normal magnetics. But the great thing about this was that Alpha was no normal cultivator. She was his clone. The fact that she could even reach this level was astounding in and of itself. Even if she was somewhere between the body formation and nascent spirit realm, this still meant that she was miles above even 9th stage body formation magnetics. She was practically invulnerable against them. Yes, it was a shame that she could never reach anything higher than where she currently was now, but that didn't matter. After all, she was just 1 out of 5. Michael had 4 other clones just waiting to transform just like she did. Even if Alpha couldn't defeat a nascent spirit cultivator herself, having 4 other clones fighting by her side definitely increased her chances. "How do you feel?" he asked Alpha. His newly awakened clone remained silent, taciturn like a statue. He didn't mind. Who was he to question the strongest Rebornian among them? "You're probably sad, right? You want more of your siblings to be like you, right? Well, don't worry, Your Highness. I shall endeavor to fulfill your wishes." He bowed, excitement growing on his face. "Chat JK5, you got it, right? Positive. Using the parameters found on Alpha during her corruption, I am now able to perceive others afflicted with the same virus." He closed his eyes, feeling a wave of information pass through to his mind. He let the software do its thing before eventually, the drone vision showed an entirely new collapsible window to the side. Whenever he looked at someone's heart using ability vision, he'd now also be able to see if they had any fake Godforge pieces in their hearts. Why? Well, to hunt them, of course. Those fake Godforge pieces were corrupt, nefarious, and inflicted insidious side effects that no normal human should ever have to go through. But once they were wielded by his Unity clones, all their evil corruption would get bathed in a holy fire, purging them from all its effects. He was doing the world a service by getting rid of this plague, while also empowering himself in the process. Seeing such a good outcome from this experiment, he wanted all of his clones to become like Alpha. He'd take the real Godforge pieces from the 4 of them and repurpose it towards the Dragonborns. That way, he could build an entire army of nascent spirit clones, while all the real Godforge pieces were going towards the Dragonborns. He could see it now. The Dragonborns as generals, his nascent spirit clones as his platoons, and a hive of drones following from above. It was an unstoppable force. Filled with excitement, he embarked on fulfilling that vision. If I want Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo to each break through to the nascent spirit realm, then I'd need a total of 180 kilograms worth of fakes. It looked like investigating the Fostil company was the way to go. Not only would he be able to get more answers about the mystery of this fake, but he'll also get the chance to obtain more for his own use. Good thing I've already got a lead. With nothing left to do, Michael used his shadow and teleported himself, his main drone, and 15 mini-drones to New Sparta. Where was his missing mini-drone? Well, he left it back in a place to catch something. Or someone. Michael teleported himself to the brown-blood werewolf tribe, his ears immediately getting filled with vigorous cheers and shouts, followed by the sound of a satisfying clink, as a baseball flew over his head. As expected, these werewolves were getting addicted to playing baseball. They've even built new arenas suitable for both kids and adults. He would have joined, but he had more important business to attend to. He headed straight to their chief's quarters. Chief Lupin was at his desk, looking over papers and leather-bound books with scrutiny. "Ah, you're just in time," said Chief Lupin. "I've just been finishing up on the baseball rulebooks. We need to submit this to all tribes before the festival." Michael walked forward and shook his head. "Before that, let's talk about something more important. You said something about a dwarf in New Sparta." Chief Lupin nodded. Oh yes, that dwarf has sort of become a mythical figure within New Sparta, sparking discussions and a competitive fire all around. Some say that he is quite an intrepid character, a stalwart of the beastfolk race and the last bastion of a bygone era. He looked askance at that description. Huh? Really? He wouldn't quite describe Byru with the same adjectives. Perhaps an alcoholic derelict would be a more sufficient epithet for the guy. Other people would know that if they knew that he abandoned his kingdom for some playtime in New Sparta. Of course, nobody has seen a dwarf for thousands of years, and he brings with him legendary items as well, such as the mythical Damascus steel. Some even say the man has already figured out a way to make mithril, though I don't know if that's true or not. Michael sighed. The Dwarven King was having way too much fun in New Sparta. Still, I would like to talk with this Dwarven King, even if it's just for a small conversation. Chief Lupin yearned. Where is he? The brown-blood chief chuckled self-deprecatingly. I would like to know as well, but with our standings in New Sparta, I would be the last to know. But I have heard that the Aubert Company has been in talks with him, possibly asking for a chance at an allyship. For a brief second, Chief Lupin displayed a hint of regret. If he had allied with the Auberts as he originally planned, then perhaps he could have also met with the Dwarven King. Shaking his head, Chief Lupin purged this wistful thought from his mind. He felt guilty of having such thoughts in Michael's presence. But it all worked out better than I expected. Don't get me wrong. It's just that now that the Auberts found solace in another werewolf tribe, one of my rivals is going to benefit from this allyship with the dwarves. Michael waved off his concern. I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. Huh? Why'd you say that? I just have a feeling that the Dwarven King wouldn't accept another alliance. Chief Lupin wondered why Michael was so sure of his words, but eventually just shrugged it off. You're probably right. Even conglomerates failed miserably and got spurned at the gates whenever they tried to make alliance with the dwarves. I just got to console myself with the fact that nobody else in New Sparta would succeed either. Meanwhile, Michael began to ruminate about his next steps. Byru is with the Aubert Company, so I could go there if I want to meet with the guy. The problem was that he didn't know where the Aubert Company was. I really need information about everything in New Sparta. Then he remembered. He was going to meet up with Tenzing soon. The tanned, lanky guy still owed him 5 kilograms of Godforge pieces. It was a perfect coincidence. Tenzing was a part of the Rising Six, which meant that he was a lot more privy to the current happenings in New Sparta. He probably knew where the Auberts Company was located. Not only that, but he probably knew more about the Fostil Company than he did. It was hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. So, with his plan set in stone, he conjured a magic circle in his hands and sent a message to Tenzing about where and when to meet. Once done, his shadow began to envelop all around his body to start his teleportation. But before he left, Chief Lupin stopped him. Wait, Kyo. Would you do me a favor? His shadows receding to his feet, Michael asked. What? Chief Lupin retrieved something from his desk, cupping it tightly as he showed it to Michael. Michael frowned as he heard the sound of metal scratching against metal, with a few bits and pieces falling out of the werewolf chief's hands. He already knew what it was. I forgot I had it in my pockets while we were playing baseball, and things got a little bit too rough. He opened his hands, showing shattered scrap metal and glass shards incongruously mixed together. It was eviscerated. Michael felt a pang in his heart when he saw his proud phone destroyed in such a gruesome manner. Haha, I didn't know it was so fragile. Well, in the hands of a barbarous werewolf with superhuman strength, everything was fragile. This really couldn't be blamed on Michael. I suggest not having your phone with you whenever you're using your Dao heart to transform, Michael reproached. I'll have to replace this with another one, which of course you'll have to pay for. Of course, sorry about this, Chief Lupin said genuinely. This is one of the problems that werewolves have daily. No matter how much we practice, there are always times when we can't control our powers and inadvertently destroy something we shouldn't. That's why we build our houses using wood. It's easy to replace. Michael took the remains of the phone and found a rectangular stainless steel-like box amongst the wreckage. Thankfully, this wasn't destroyed, or else the whole tribe would have exploded. What material is that? Chief Lupin asked curiously. It's quite sturdy. It didn't bend even when I used my semi-transformation. He had never seen anything like this before. All metals turned into pliable cotton under Werewolf's hands. But not this. With a metal like that, we could build better infrastructure that wouldn't get destroyed even during a fiasco on a full moon. Drunk werewolves always caused havoc during those times, destroying multiple houses in the process. But with this metal, perhaps a first-time transformation wouldn't be so dangerous as well. We can't mass-produce it right now, but probably in the future. Ah, I see. Well, I shall look forward to it. Do you have a timeline, or? Michael shrugged. Whenever that drunk guy returns. Confused, Chief Lupin ignored Michael's weird ramblings. And what is the name of this metal? Michael didn't know why Chief Lupin was so surprised. Was it really that serious that he had to turn into his giant wolf form? He thought it was obvious. After all, he wasn't keeping it a secret amongst the Rebornian citizens. And as newly minted allies, the brown-blood werewolves were given access to most amenities that their nation offered. Heck, some of the metal bats used in their training were made out of Damascus steel. Can you please calm down? Michael felt like he was dealing with a dog. No matter how much he tried to relax them, it only seemed to make them more excited. I guess I should give him some slack. I did just reveal that I got access to Mithril. I'll leave him alone for now. So, Michael discreetly teleported himself out of the brown blood tribe, leaving Chief Lupin to basically vent out all of his surprise into the moon hiding in the blue skies. In a hidden, tucked corner away from prying eyes, Michael ascended from the shadows. He was currently in the boundary between the mermen's and the werewolves' quadrant. This was where most humans stationed themselves, selling small trinkets in their makeshift carts to earn as much sand dollars as they could. He leaned on the cyclopean wall and waited for Tenzing to arrive. A few minutes later, he heard someone call for him. Michael! He turned around, seeing a tall, lanky, and dark-skinned youth approaching him with a big old smile on his face. It was Tenzing from the Mountain Movers Company, part of the Rising Six in Metropolis. You seem to be in a good mood. Tenzing smiled. Why wouldn't I be? I just looked like a hero in front of my peers. Those 50,000 sand dollars you gave me really helped out a lot. But don't worry, I got your goods right here. Michael looked down at Tenzing's waist, seeing a lot of climbing-related gear strapped to his belt. And among the roll of rope and carabiners, he saw a strange metallic box dangling by his side. Is that the Godforge pieces? Michael asked. Tenzing looked down. Oh, this? No, this is different. Your Godforge pieces are here. The lanky guy took out the large climbing rucksack from his back and began rummaging through it on the ground. Eventually, he retrieved a similar metallic box from his belongings and showed it to Michael. Here, 5 kilograms of Godforge pieces. Though his long-awaited items were right in front of him, Michael couldn't help but stare at the other similar-looking box on Tenzing's waist. Spurred on by his curiosity, he used his drone vision to peer through the inside. Surveying it through a heat vision-like filter, he saw the box turn into an ominous dark violet-blue color. It was as if it was sucking out all the heat in its surroundings. But except for heat, this one was sucking in ability power instead. Tell me what's inside that, he insisted. Tenzing pursed his lips, looking around warily before beckoning Michael to come closer. I can't talk about it to you here. There's too many people around. Michael, not caring about anything other than that box, snapped his fingers and teleported him and Tenzing out of New Sparta and inside a cave. Whoa! Now, can you please tell me what's inside? Tenzing was forcefully reminded of the fact that Michael was a genius in magic rivaling even that of mystic masters. Ahem. Yeah. This thing. Tenzing took the metallic box from his belt and presented it to Michael. With a single touch, its faces began to move and unfold like that of an origami, allowing them to see what was inside. The cube contained a black, glass-like mineral with a wide base and a pointed top. Its ridges and almost crystallized edges looked like that of an iceberg. It was a fake Godforge piece. It's called the Artifice. And supposedly, it should replace a God-forged piece. Michael frowned. Where did you hear that? It's been spreading around the magnetic circles. I know it's hard to believe too, but I've seen it firsthand. How? Tenzing raised his hand, showing his forearm wrapped in bandage. He began unfolding it, revealing a deep cut that went from his wrist, all the way nearing his elbow. This didn't look like an ordinary cut, as it seemed to be festering with a black, rotting veins growing out of the laceration. According to the healers, it will take 2 months for this thing to heal. It's caused by an ability power, you see. An ability power that is in the 9th stage of body formation. 9th stage? Michael questioned. Who? As far as he knew, there weren't a lot of those going around. By some company nobody has even heard of. Last year, they didn't even have a single magnetic beyond the 5th stage. But now, they're being led by someone in the 9th stage. Can you believe it? And they say that it's all because of this thing right here. This thing called the Artifice. Thoughts whirled in Michael's mind before he uttered out his guess. Was they called the Faux Still Company? Tenzing fervently nodded. Yeah. How did you know? Michael kept his mouth shut. Anyway, I'm very curious, so I tried to get one myself. And after looking around, I found a seller who sold me this piece. He said that it's enough for me to transcend to the 6th stage. Of course, I don't believe him, but it was only 1,000 sand dollars, so I bought it. Michael looked at him with a serious gaze. Don't do it. Tenzing raised his hands. Hey, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm just curious, so I bought it. I was going to give it to the authorities to let them know someone has been selling these fakes. Who? Who sold you that? Finding that man may get him closer to figuring out the mystery behind this artifice. He didn't give me a name or affiliation. He just introduced himself as Seditious. Michael marked that in his mind. There were a lot of implications with that moniker, giving this mysterious person the image of someone rebellious, recalcitrant, and defiant. But this doesn't make sense. The artifices in Frick and the Faux Still Company were meant to be a secret. They made sure no one was going to find out about it. But now they're just selling it out into the public? Perhaps he had it wrong. Perhaps this seditious character was a different entity to the ones in charge of the Faux Still Company. The fact that he was selling this artifice to other people probably meant that he was trying to destroy the established monopoly of artifices and want them to become more ubiquitous around the world, while the Faux Still Company wanted them to be kept in the dark. Michael would have thought this was a heroic act if he didn't know any better. After all, this artifice gave ordinary people who didn't have thousands of sand dollars to spare, a chance to transcend the normal limits of humanity and join the League of Magnetics. However, ironically, this came at the cost of their humanity, and he had a feeling that this seditious character didn't disclose it to the people he was selling it to. Did they tell you anything about this artifice? Like, does it have some side effects? They said that it's just like any other expedience. Power always comes at a price. Now, lucky for me, I'm not desperate enough to have an untested material surgically implanted into my heart. But I'm betting some people are more desperate enough to take that chance. Especially here in New Sparta, where strength can determine whether you succeed and reach the levels of conglomerates, or crash down and burn into the ground. Michael pursed his lips. He was worried exactly for that reason. What does he look like? This seditious character? Tenzing frowned and crossed his arms on his chest. I'm sure he was using a disguise. But, he. Michael tilted his head at him. Unluckily for him, I did recently awaken a new ability power, Tenzing proudly announced. If I remember correctly, Tenzing could imbue enhanced gravity on anything he touched. He hadn't interacted directly with Tenzing during the auction, but he did see his fight against Bo. Don't tell anybody else, but I got a new ability power that allows me to increase the gravity of someone's powers. This includes their disguise, stressing them out and making them more exhausted, basically. So, when I made contact with him, I tried to get his disguise to drop. It didn't work, of course. His cultivation was in the 9th stage. But I did notice that a small part of his face was weaker than the rest of his body. Meaning? Tenzing shrugged. This could mean a lot of things. It was either his use of his ability power was sloppy, it could be that I saw it wrong, or it could be that there was a part of his face that was a lot harder to control because of an injury. Like this. He showed Michael the festering gash on his forearm. I think he has the same thing I have on his right eye, but I guess now it's just a scar. This was a pretty good clue. Now, all he had to do was to look for a person with an almost rotting scar on his right eye. Easy, right? Now, I just need to show this to Alaric and the others. Everyone needs to be warned to stay away, Tenzing resolved. Though it may be better to keep it a secret. Everyone's feeling the pressure because of the Auberts, and I do not want to give them the temptation. Michael perked up. The Auberts? Yeah, you know them, right? Well, everyone's been hearing about their achievements constantly, and it's making them nervous. I mean, they've made friends with the werewolves, the mermen, and even the dragons. I heard they're even trying to make an alliance with the dwarves, Michael mentioned. Tenzing nodded. Yeah, they tried. But thankfully, that didn't happen, so we're still in the clear. The balance between companies would definitely shift if they succeeded. Michael guessed as much. Do you know where the Dwarf King is now? Nah, sorry. That was unfortunate. Who would have thought that the infamous dwarves would have a king with restless feet? The guy was just nowhere to be found. Thank you, Tenzing. It's been helpful. If you need anything else, you can ask me. Tenzing waved him off. No worries, my man. We're Metropolisian, Metropolitan, Metropolis, whatever. We stick together. No, you've really helped me. Just ask. Tenzing scratched his head, embarrassed for a second. Well, I am planning on buying some more Su drops, but you probably don't have any spare sand dollars, right? Michael smiled. Actually, if you have more Godforge pieces to sell, I'm willing to buy them. Forget it. Everyone is having trouble with sand dollars. I shouldn't be greedy. You said what now? Do you have more? Tenzing stared at Michael, trying to understand his words. Really? You can buy more? Yeah. Immediately, Tenzing rummaged through his giant rucksack, retrieving about 3 more metallic cubes. I have 15 more kilograms. I would really appreciate it if you buy 5 more. I'll take 'em all, Michael said, taking a pouch from his shadow that contained 150,000 SD in total. Hearing the hefty sounds of sand dollars scratching against each other, the lanky mountaineer malfunctioned. Michael smiled. Finally, he wasn't the one getting surprised with enormous amounts of sand dollars. It was his time to do it to others. Not only that, but with 15 kilograms of Godforge pieces, he finally had enough to advance the Dragonborns directly to the 3rd stage. It was about time. Zion would get left behind as he's the only one who hadn't awakened his diva. But whatever. How do you have so much? After a while, Tenzing calmed down. He forgot that Michael was the person who ultimately won the auction using mammoth wealth. He just didn't think that Michael could accumulate that much sand dollars in such a short amount of time. Of course, if he knew that Michael built the Reborn company in 2-3 years tops, then he wouldn't be surprised as he was now. Damn. I wish I had more Godforge pieces. Michael nodded. If you have any more, just tell me and I'll buy them off you. Tenzing pumped his hands. We'll be having an expedition in the mountains soon, and hopefully we'll find some Godforge pieces there. I wish I was as good at magic as you are. That way I could just send a message to you whenever. But whatever. With these sand dollars, we'll be able to search deeper on the ground. Michael scratched his head. Actually, I have just the solution for you. He presented the lanky mountaineer with the phone and told him all about its features. And by the end, Tenzing's face was downcast, his expression obscured. How much? 10,000 sand dollars each. Tenzing looked at the pouch in his grasp, his hands trembling. He was battling with himself on the inside, and in the end, his curiosity got the best of him. He pushed the money back to Michael, all 150000 sand dollars he gained from the Godforge pieces. Michael smiled, giving the most amiable customer service smile. Pleasure doing business with you. This is so unfair. In the end, Tenzing came back to his company as poor as before, and 15 kilograms of Godforge pieces sold off. He didn't even have the phones yet. Most of his adjutants wondered if he got finagled by some unscrupulous man, but Tenzing just told them to trust him and that it was worth it. They never trusted him again after that. Meanwhile, in the heart of an unknown city obscured by shadows, two hooded individuals met in an unpopulated alleyway. "How is my father?" One of the individuals slid her hood back, revealing herself to be none other than Katerina Petrovich. The person she was talking to was a member of their secret organization, and for safety's sake, he didn't reveal his face. After bringing the antique to the professor, he has shown signs of significant progress. He is in the sleep-talking stage of his failsafe. He's mumbling words related to his discovery, the agent reported. What were the words? Unity, Supreme, God, and Divas. He's repeating those 4 words constantly. Our researchers believe that he has found something relating to the ancient era, especially because of unity. The words seem so disparate, having no solid connection to each other than their importance in ancient history. But Liechtenstein already knew those even before coming to New Sparta. Whatever tipped off his failsafe must have been something recent. However, unity was not recent, and those with supreme talents were on the other side of the world. No human had that. Wait, is one of the beast folk rulers here secretly? Katerina shook her head. There would have been signs. Despite this progress, it will still take him a year to recover according to our estimates, said the agent. Not if I can help it, Katerina declared. Finding that second antique bone may progress her father's condition earlier than they anticipated. She turned around, resolved to meet with the elves. They were the key to meeting with the Dragoconian who had it in his possession. Wait, our leaders urge you to keep your eyes open. They have been making their moves in New Sparta. Katerina looked back. What? They've been spreading their doctrine, slowly gathering their forces. We believe that they're planning something with the beast folks. They seem to be focusing their energy on them. Katerina turned pensive. It wasn't the Draconians. They were too powerful to be influenced. The elves despised their ideology. It could be the vampires, but they were too focused on their own religion. There were only 2 races left. Was it the mermen? The hooded agent was silent for a moment before answering. It's the werewolves. Them? Katerina couldn't understand it. Is it because of the lunar celebrations? We believe so, but it's more complicated than that. According to our spies, we believe that they're targeting the gold-blood werewolves. This caused Katerina to recall her memories, back to when her father was telling her the history of the beast folks. Seeing the carefree face of her father surrounded by books caused a pang in her heart for a second, but she steeled herself. Eventually, she remembered. It's the purebloods. The agent nodded. Yes, they're trying to take the heritage of the purebloods. During the old days, there was this ultra-powerful werewolf tribe who had an indubitable strength. They were the origin, the progenitor, and the ancestor of all known werewolves today. They were called the purebloods. That name bore a resemblance to another beastfolk race, the royal bloods from the vampire race. That was because the pureblood werewolves were vassals to the royal bloods. They served as the royal guards, the cavaliers, and the knight of the original vampire herself. And with the power she bestowed, the royal blood vampires and the pureblood werewolves were unstoppable, paving the way for the monster continent to be the kingdom that it was now. However, the original vampire disappeared from the face of the earth, and the pureblood werewolves soon lost their power. They branched into many tribes, some going on till this very day. But legends say that there were 2 specific werewolf tribes who still carried that heritage. It was believed that they carried the power born through the original vampire's bestowal. They were the brown bloods and the gold bloods. But it's been disproven. Those were just myths, Katerina muttered. They believe differently. The brown blood werewolves have deteriorated to become the weakest tribe in their species. However, the gold bloods were different. They exhibit a latent potential that they deem to be important. Meanwhile, surrounded by a pinewood forest, a werewolf tribe resided peacefully on the bottom of a tall mountain. These werewolves, unlike the brownbloods who could be identified by their brown fur clothes and unique tattoos, used ornate and opulent gold jewelries to denote their statues within the tribe. This was the Goldbloods, led by none other than their savage leader, Chief Klaus. A limping old man whose body was filled with both scars and gold ornaments sat on an austere throne. In front of him was a group of men and women the exact opposite of the Goldblood chief. They looked young, inexperienced, and almost juvenile. These were the prototypical scions of established families who only got their start because of their lineage. Usually, Chief Klaus wouldn't even give these people the time of the day. They looked like they hadn't even spilled blood. But his and his tribe's circumstance didn't exactly give him the luxury of spurning them at the door. As we said, Chief Klaus, we will be able to provide you with the moonstone that you need. You can be assured that we shall also give you the resources for the lunar celebrations. We can dispense 10 magnetics at the very least. We aren't even asking for much, Chief Klaus. Our services do not require sand dollars, which I'm sure other companies have tried to do. Chief Klaus looked at them askance. Then what do you want? I find it suspicious that you're willing to give so much without something in return. Is the Fostil Company really that affluent to be doing charity to a disabled man like me? The young scions of the Fostil Company shivered upon hearing that self-deprecating joke. They felt like their hearts would seize if they laughed at him. No, sir. We do not think lowly of you or the Goldblood tribe. It is the exact opposite. We value the valor, strength, and wisdom that you provide. Because of that, we want to have you as our ally. The Fostil Company only asks for you to lend us a hand during times of trouble. That is the only requirement that we ask. The Goldblood chief got up from his chair, limping as he paced left and right. A seasoned veteran like me is only good for war. Are you expecting it? Or are you the one asking for it? The young representatives of the Fostil Company squirmed as they sat on their knees. They shot looks at each other, with no one wanting to be the first to speak. Eventually, Chief Klaus got bored. If you don't even have the courage to speak, then, yes, Chief Klaus, we do not want war, but our leaders are expecting it. There will be people who disagree with our way of living. They fear the strength that we possess. Once they said that these little fledglings showed a crazed, savage look. Chief Klaus was unnerved for a moment. They shouldn't have that kind of strength in their eyes. That look could only be forged through hard work, experience, and wisdom. Yet, these kids had the same look as a warrior that was bathed in blood. It felt unnatural, like seeing a small cub barbarously take a bite out of its own parent. From the moment he met these people, he felt that there was something wrong with them. He just couldn't tell what. Then he realized, these people were cold. Humans and beastfolk all exhibited heat during times of stress. But these kids only got colder as he pressured them. We need your strength, Chief Klaus. We know that you will understand our ways. You empathize with our understanding of strength. Power at all costs. If you help us, we can take care of that treacherous brother of yours. A sharp pain ran through his left leg. He winced, feeling weak and vulnerable as the day he lost control of his own body, the day that he was betrayed. Chief Klaus immediately steeled himself. Immediately, all that pain and vulnerability was transmuted into anger and fury. His eyes turned red, his hunched body starting to grow bigger. He was on the verge of transformation. Think about it, Chief Klaus. You can finally get rid of that problem once and for all. We'll be waiting for your word. And with that ominous offer, the scions of the Fostil Company left the room, leaving Chief Klaus to stew in his own emotions. Tables and chairs slammed across the wall as Chief Klaus's anger ran amok. His fervid hate for his brother was only exacerbated by the pain he felt in his leg. It was ever present, even during his transformation, making it a constant reminder of his own blood's betrayal. And in his anger, he couldn't help but start to consider the youth's words. He knew they were suspicious. Their motives were up to no good. And even though the price to pay for their help looked cheap, he knew that they would be trapping him in an insidious promise. War was never cheap, and if he helped them with their war, he'd be selling out his own tribe. He'd be making them fight and risk their lives for something that they didn't care about. It was only rational for him to reject their offer. But the pain was making him irrational. After all, They promised him something that he'd been waiting for his whole life, and he was willing to throw away everything in order to finally get justice and closure. With his blood still steaming with anger, he went to the door, intending to rush and catch up to the faux still company. But the door opened before he could get to it. There, in front of him, Chief Klaus saw an old friend. "You!" A dwarf with a braided beard almost down to his feet leaned by the door, a distinct beer scent emanating from his body. "Klaus, old buddy, what's that look on your face? Still bitter, huh?" It was none other than the Dwarven King. "What the hell are you doing here?" The Dwarven King showed a pained look on his face. "Wow, really? And here I thought you would appreciate me coming all the way over here." Chief Klaus felt all the anger on his body drain and be replaced by a sense of exhaustion. Dealing with this guy made his head hurt, not in the normal sense but in memory. The hangovers he had after drinking with this dwarf was almost as painful as his crippled leg. "Can't I just visit an old friend?" "Of course not. You're the Dwarven King." He was supposed to be ruling the most secluded kingdom in all the world. He shouldn't be prancing around like any other person. Didn't he know how much trouble he would cause in New Sparta because of his appearance? He didn't even know how this guy wasn't being crowded by opportunistic busybodies all the time. One of the most sought-after materials was Damascus steel, and he was the only one who could supply them. Suffice it to say, even someone on the lowest totem pole of New Sparta would suddenly rise to the very top if they somehow caught an alliance with the dwarves. That was how valuable the dwarves were, how valuable their king was. And now he just showed himself here with no warning, and seemingly no guards around him. "No, really. What did you come here for?" Chief Klaus asked sternly. There must have been an incredibly deep and serious reason as to why the Dwarven King left his kingdom. Byru shrugged. "Nothing. Just wanted to catch up with you." "Really? Maybe crack a couple of cold ones like old times." Chief Klaus was utterly confused. "What the hell are you talking about? Drinking? Are you seriously saying that you're breaking thousands of years of Dwarven tradition just to drink alcohol with me?" The Dwarven King laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha ha. You may be a good friend of mine, but you're not that important. No, that tradition has been broken long before this." "What?" Byru nodded and invited himself to the chief's quarters. Yup. A lot has changed after your last visit." In truth, Chief Klaus had been a good friend of the dwarves for a long time. Before the incident where he lost his left leg, the Gold Blood Chief was quite the roamer throughout the world. And one of his frequent stops was the Dwarven Kingdom, where he bonded with Byru through a mutual love of drinking. In fact, the very reason why the Dwarven Kingdom could even afford to buy Michael's phones was due to Chief Klaus. He was purchasing Damascus steel from them in exchange for sand dollars. It was a beneficial exchange for both groups. The Dwarven Kingdom had purchasing power, while the Goldbloods had an edge over the competition thanks to the Damascus steel provided by Byru. "I was waiting for you to visit after I heard about the Great Migration. But you didn't come, so I had to come see you for myself." Byru tried to take a seat, but found all the chairs broken into splinters. Meanwhile, Klaus remained silent. His hands subconsciously scratched his atrophied leg. "Why didn't you come?" Byru asked again, sweeping the floor as he took a seat. The Gold Blood Chief didn't answer. "If you had, then you would have seen the amazing change in our kingdom. We have electricity now. Oh, beer. You should try that too. And a train. It goes all the way from the parched lands, to Kingsbridge town, and to our kingdom." Klaus shook his head, overwhelmed with all of those new terms. "What? Kingsbridge? Isn't that a human settlement?" "Yeah? So?" Byru asked as if that was a nonsensical question. "So? No human is allowed in your kingdom." Byru finally remembered and chuckled. He'd been so used to his comfortable life now that he completely forgot about that dark time when they shunned everyone. "Right, well, as I told you, a lot has changed. Anyone can enter the Dwarven Kingdom now. Don't look so surprised." Chief Klaus had to sit down on the ground. "A lot is an understatement. How did this even happen?" "It's a long story, but all you need to know is that a human called Michael helped us dwarves realize that life would be better if we opened our borders. and our alliance with the Reborn company has only benefited us ever since. But what about you? You seem to be in dire need of a drink, Byru said, picking up the splinters of a wrecked wooden chair. Yeah, actually, I'm having trouble with a decision right now. The Dwarven King smiled before rummaging through his thick brown braided beard and taking out 2 glass bottles of Rebornian beer. Lucky for you, I have just the thing. Chief Klaus' eyes widened as he savored the flavor of beer. It perfectly quenched his desire for numbing the pain in his leg, especially after talking about it with Byru. So, this Fostil company wants to ally with you, and you think that they're suspicious, but you still want to accept it. Byru burped before punching a knuckle on the Gold-Blood chief's head. You idiot. Klaus grumbled like a dog at him. You're letting your bitter and angry feud with your brother get in the way of your thinking. Never do that again. I will if you keep being stupid. You're willing to risk your own tribe just to destroy your brother? Can't you just bury the hatchet? Chief Klaus massaged his leg. No, never. His betrayal can only be resolved through his death. Byru groaned as he got up and stretched his body. As your friend, I'm going to do you a favor. Come outside. Klaus frowned. What for? You need to get your feet moving so that you can disperse all that negative energy in your body. Lucky for you, I got the best remedy. Byru opened the door and looked back at his friend. I'll show you how to play baseball. Meanwhile, on the other side of the quadrant on New Sparta, in a mystical dreamscape filled with tall towering trees, was a village of elves. Their houses were perched atop these trees, with multiple vine bridges and overpasses connecting to each other. A group of elves were currently sitting on one of the largest bridges connecting 2 opposite sides of the forest together, holding their bows and pulling its string taut. Then they released it, shooting their arrows at the hay target below. Upon being struck, the hay bale suddenly exploded into a flurry of colorful powder of smoke that billowed out into the air like a volcanic eruption. What followed after that was the harmonious sounds of zither being played from somewhere inside the forest. The thick and dense foliage bounced these pleasurable sounds, making it seem ethereal and coming from the gods themselves. We welcome you back, Lady Farron. A guardian elf wearing a cuirass made out of vines shouted at the top of his lungs, with his voice being echoed by the other elves beside him. Today was the return of their Lady Farron from her courageous and honorable trip out into the Queen's region of the Royal Continent. She had been traveling all around, pursuing any clues that talked about potential Darkwood, reserves hidden in undiscovered tombs and natural mazes. Now, Lady Farron was already a venerable warrior amongst their midst, hence her title as Lady. But it was only recently that she attained sort of a celebrity status within the rest of the elven community here in New Sparta. It wasn't just because she had been retrieving Darkwood at a commensurate rate than others, but it was because of one other item that she brought back during one of her travels. And that was none other than the magnificent compound bow. This weapon was unlike any other. Its craftsmanship bested even that of the famous blacksmiths back in the Elven Kingdom. The power that could be purchased with this bow was unbelievable. Even a small kid could cut through large slabs of stone with a single carefree shot. And that wasn't even using their Dao hearts at all. Not only that, but this compound bow was actually made out of mithril. Real, unadulterated mithril. That alone made it worthy to become the Elven Kingdom's most treasured relic. The fact that Lady Farron brought this mythical and legendary weapon into the hands of the elves made her worthy of being called a leader by all the elves here in New Sparta. Hence, there was a lot of fanfare and tumultuous cheering upon her arrival. Lady Farron, a middle-aged female elf with flower petals braided into her hair, stepped out of the carriage and received the warm welcome of her community. The male guardian elf who announced her arrival immediately bowed and gave her veneration. Lady Farron, it is an honor to serve you. Lady Farron nodded back at the elf. Did anything of interest happen while we were away? We have retrieved a couple of Darkwood vines from certain individuals. One of them requested a meeting with you and we obliged. They will be informed of your arrival soon. That is good to hear. Unfortunately, our travels didn't amount to much, she said, crestfallen. A lot of those leads ended up as duds or as traps. She persevered, thinking that she was bound to find at least one darkwood out there. But it was a forlorn dream. Wanting to forget about that, Lady Farron walked briskly towards the largest tree in the elven forest. She wanted to see the darkwood they accumulated while they were gone. As she walked, the male guardian elf caught her up to speed with the rest of the events that transpired while she was away. We have been hearing some rumors about the Dwarven King making an appearance, but we don't know for sure if it was legit. Lady Farron ignored that rumor. We have turned down alliances from most companies, as you requested, Lady Farron. But there is a small population of elves that are displeased with this. This one she wasn't that concerned about. It doesn't matter. The male elf continued. The other factions will get a foothold because of this, but like you said, it won't matter. The compound bow is still too large of an influence for others to make a significant change. Lady Farron resolved herself to find Michael and the Reborn company soon. It was just unfortunate that she couldn't find time to go to Metropolis soon. What else has happened? The werewolves' lunar celebrations are coming near. One of the tribes has made their game an archery competition. They have asked us and the other elven factions to participate. This was expected. Has she been practicing? The male elf looked troubled. Ah, that's the thing, Lady Farron. She hasn't touched a bow in almost a week. Farron clicked her tongue. That brat. Tell Lyra to come to my quarters later. Don't discipline her too much, Lady Farron. She did just recently recover from her curse. Most elves treated Lyra like she was as fragile as glass. Sure, the little girl used to be afflicted by the curse of the Dow Heart, but that changed ever since she took a hold of the compound bow. Using the weapon seemed to have miraculously cured her of that disease. That's exactly why I'm hard on her. She needs to keep using that bow or the curse could come back, Lady Farron said sternly. The other elves had nothing else to say after that. Soon, they finally arrived at the bottom of the grandest tree in the forest. They all took their bows and shot it at a branch high up in the sky. Their arrows, with string knotted on the fletchings, wrapped around the branch and allowed them to pull themselves upwards. Finally, Lady Farron was back home. She immediately entered her quarters and into her vault. And there, she saw the growing collection of darkwood all neatly lined up on a velvet-lined cabinet. She inspected each one, nodding her head in satisfaction. Looks like I don't need to travel far anymore. They accumulated about 6 darkwood pieces while she was gone, while she netted 0 during her adventures. This was proof that it was much better to have others hunt darkwood for them, instead of wasting their time searching for it themselves. It cost them 200,000 sand dollars each, but it was still worth it because of the incredible value that darkwood gave them. Once it was weaved inside a bow, that weapon's power, durability, and accuracy would increase drastically. Welcome anyone trying to sell darkwood, she declared. The male guardian elf nodded. Shall I ask Lyra to come in? Lady Farron crossed her arms on her chest and said, Yes, that girl needs to. But just as she was in the middle of her thought, something caught her attention in the corner of her eyes. She looked back at the cabinet, the collection of darkwood creating a mythical and ancient ambience. The first 4 shelf partitions at the top were filled with darkwood, while the 5th one at the bottom was mostly empty, only having 1 darkwood on display. She stared at it. This darkwood was their most recent acquisition. The male elf noticed her piqued curiosity and explained, We bought this darkwood just a few days ago from a golden-haired boy. What's his name? Lady Farron asked, her gaze still riveted by this peculiar darkwood. If I remember correctly, his name was Keo and he was accompanied by a tall, dark-haired woman going by the name Katarina. Why? Is there something wrong with it? Lady Farron approached the velvet cushion-lined cabinet, disabling the defensive mechanism by letting the string of her bow run across its edge. Her Dow heart glowed for a second, before the ever-present ethereal mist surrounding the cabinet dissipated into the air. Immediately, a distinct earthy, musky, and a slight bit woody smell emanated from the darkwood collection. It evoked the invisible but indomitable power of the earth. Strangely though, there was a new scent entering into her senses. It was mossy and moist, giving her the impression of petrichor after a long summer drought. This new and enigmatic scent was just a small wisp, a tiny sliver compared to the overpowering smell of all the darkwood in their possession. But it was evident nonetheless. It was crisp and demanded her attention. After all, darkwood should smell like something ancient, something that was buried on the ground and left to settle and age for thousands of years. But this new scent almost seemed youthful. It smelled like a newly clipped scion or branch, just oozing leafy freshness. It almost seemed as if the darkwood was newly harvested. But that couldn't be, right? No matter how impossible the thought was, Lady Farron just couldn't get it out of her mind. She moved her face closer to the cabinet, basking in the fragrance and aroma of all these darkwood vines one by one. She sniffed them all, until she landed on the very last row where only a single darkwood piece laid amongst empty indents on the velvet cushion. It was this emanated that sprightly energy that she has been sensing this whole time. She quickly wrenched the darkwood from its resting place and observed it closer with her own eyes. And there she saw it. The rough, bone-dry, and crisp surface of the vines on this darkwood wasn't desiccated at all. She could still see the hint of green underneath all those bark. And if that wasn't enough evidence, she could still feel fresh, moist soil wedged on the knotted vines. There was no mistaking it. This darkwood was recently harvested. Great heavens! Lady Farron muttered. This discovery left her weak in the knees. She backed away from the cabinet and sat on an ornate chair near the door, with the newly harvested darkwood still in her hands. "Lady Farron, what's wrong?" the male guardian elf asked. "Tell me, why has the elven kingdom journeyed out this far off from the continent?" The male elf frowned, confused at this unexpected question. "It's because we need the darkwood, Lady Farron. Why don't we just grow it ourselves?" The elf chuckled, thinking that she was joking, but the serious look on her face told him she wasn't. "It's because we can't, Lady Farron. It's not just hard, it's impossible." Farron looked back at the elf. "Then how come a human succeeded?" she said, bringing the darkwood closer for him to see. Meanwhile, Michael returned to the Merman Lake to finish up on the filter that he promised them. With the help of a few mermen, a giant filter was created atop the broken mast of the sunken ship. Took him the whole day. After all, he wasn't just installing the filter itself, but also the peripherals that went with it. This included all the electrical wirings that would snake around the entire sunken ship to provide electricity and energy to every single inhabitant inside. Many mermen watched while he worked, their eyes filled with surprise and awe at his magical skills. They'd never seen a human do this underwater before. And as soon as he installed the Unity crystal into the filter for fuel, the engines inside whirred into life. Immediately, fresh and magically dense water flowed throughout the sunken ship, making them feel renewed and rejuvenated. "Wow, this feels like I'm back in the oceans. I can breathe so easily now. Hey look, Mom. So many species of fishes are swimming around us." The effects of the filter were immediate. It not only improved the life inside the sunken ship, but also its vicinity. The desolate lake floor was desolate no more. "Amazing job," Princess Octavia said. "This news will spread, and more of my brother's citizens will migrate to the sunken ship. When can you build the next one?" Michael didn't give her a specific time. He'd be too busy soon. After all, he just heard that Lady Farron just arrived back in New Sparta. Ding! A notification popped up in his vision, showing a half-opaque window with the words plastered in both bold and italics. "Lady Farron has returned." This came from his shadow back in the Elven Kingdom. He left it there, guarding a certain red-marked tree with a simple mailbox installed right next to it. He told the elves to put a letter inside this mailbox to inform him of Lady Farron's return. And just a few seconds ago, his shadow saw an elf drop a leaf scroll inside. Sure enough, it informed him of the news he'd been waiting for all this time. He pumped his hands, excitement curling the corner of his mouth. After all, Lady Farron's return didn't just signal a new business venture for the Reborn company, but it was also a nascent step in his mission to find the second antique. According to Bastein, the fiery red draconian Zoviru's butler, the second mythical beast bone was owned by quite a peculiar character. To say he was whimsical was putting it mildly. This draconian didn't want money, fame, nor power in exchange for this antique. Many had tried to pry the priceless curio from their hands through many lavish efforts, like gifting him a pile of sand dollars, showering him with priceless ornate jewelry and art masterpieces, and many more of the like. Yet, according to the rumors, he denied them all. It seemed that this mighty beastfolk was quite the opposite to popular draconian stereotypes. He didn't want decadent gifts. No, he just wanted to meet with the elves, plain and simple. But for some reason, the elves had been rejecting his attempts. Michael didn't know why, but he was intending to find out. And with Darkwood and Mithril artifact compound bow as leverage, he had a much higher chance than any to figure out the reason for their cavalier attitude. Maybe he just might be able to fulfill Draconian's wishes and reward him with the antique itself. Who knows if it was even possible, but a man can dream. You're not cheating on me, are you? Princess Octavia's words immediately brought him out of his reverie. What? I can see that look on your face. It's the same face you made when I offered you 100 million sand dollars for the filters. Surely, you aren't postponing my filters so that you can create filters for those other filthy marine mammals. Octavia's tentacles crossed together with reproach, her skin turning into a jealous green. He immediately raised his hand to clear his innocence. No. It has nothing to do with mermen, I swear. She looked at him, still trying to decide if he was treacherous or not. He gave her his signature amiable smile. Surely, a knave wouldn't be this charismatic, right? Unfortunately, though, it seemed she wasn't as gullible as his mother. She would have immediately forgiven him. But Princess Octavia just glared at him. Now that it came to this, Michael used his secret tactic. "All hail Princess Octavia!" he shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice echoing in the waters. As soon as the citizens of the sunken ship heard his praiseful words, they immediately echoed his sentiment with a cacophony of cheering, shouting, and tail-slapping. Princess Octavia immediately turned towards her citizens, opening her arms and basking in all the glory. It was only a second later that she broke out of her self-serving stupor, realizing that she had been tricked. She quickly turned back to face Michael, but he was already gone. Michael ascended from the shadows, finding himself in the breezy ambience of the elven forest. Phew, that was close. Contrary to the all-encompassing dark blue hue of the Merman Lake, the elven forest was filled with bright greenery, shimmering sunlight, and the cacophonous sounds of leaves rustling from activity. He immediately sensed multiple living beings in his vicinity. Thankfully, the gargantuan acacia trees blocked most of the sunlight, leaving large shades in the ground for him to hide on. Hiding inside an alcove underneath the tree's girthy roots, Michael piloted his invisible drone to fly towards the sounds of activity. It wasn't long before he saw a sparsely grouped elven guards patrolling the area. Their bows were drawn taut, with an arrow already lodged for an easy shot. They masterfully scurried atop the massive maze of protruding roots from the giant trees and barely eked out a sound. If it wasn't for his incredible senses, he wouldn't have even heard them coming. That's weird. The security wasn't this strict when I last came here. Using his 15 mini drones, he spread them out in a large diameter and noticed other groups of leaf and vine-armored elves patrolling the forest with serious looks on their faces. Spurred on by curiosity, he released his stealthy shadow and let his presence be known. A branch snapped, making the elves turn towards his location. He stepped forward, making sure to keep his hands free. For a brief, tense second, the elves drew their arrows and pointed at him. But in the next second, an elf shouted and raised his hand. His eyes shined with recognition. "Wait! He's a guest of Lady Farron." Immediately, the elven guards dropped their bows and returned their arrows to their quiver. The male guardian elf then approached Michael with a courtly bow. "Our apologies, Sir Keo. We didn't expect to see you here. We had guides waiting for you at the entrance." "Were they not there?" Michael scratched his head. "I guess we must have passed each other." The male elf didn't question it any further and gestured to Michael to follow him. "Let me lead you to our village, lest there be another case of mistaken identity." They walked forwards, with Michael noticing the increasing frequency of elven guards stationed as they got near the village. "Why all the security?" The elf pursed his lips. "We've had a bad case of ill-natured vandals lately, desecrating our trees with all sorts of carvings. But worry not, it will not trouble you during your stay." Eventually, they reached the elven village perched atop the connecting gargantuan acacia trees. The houses were built so high up that most of their roofs breached through the trees' crowns itself. "Welcome back to our village, Sir Keo. Please make yourselves at home in our municipal hall. Lady Farron just has a few matters to deal with before she can meet with you." The male elf led him back to the largest tree in the village, where a grand and ornate building was carved inside the very bark itself. He walked up the perfectly braided and twisted roots of the tree that served as the stairs, leading him up to the main municipal hall. Once inside, he saw a resplendent hall filled with embellished wooden desks made out of thousand-year-old barks, chairs and sofas made out of a single slab of wood, and tall statues of stalwart images of mighty elves. It was quite an ethereal sight, which was illuminated by natural sunlight coming from carefully placed windows along the tree's bark. The male elf guided him to what seemed to be a reception desk in the center of the hall. "This is our guest Keo. Make sure he gets the best room and accommodation," he said to the receptionist. Before she could even reply, Michael asked, "Wait, a room? Why would I need that?" "Truth be told, Sir Keo, Lady Farron is engaged in multiple important matters at the moment. You'll need to wait for a bit before she can see you." "How long?" "A single candle's worth." That wasn't bad. That was about 30 minutes, which was bearable. This also gave him the chance to immerse himself in elven culture and perhaps find out what made the whimsical draconian so interested in them. The receptionist gave him a large acorn, which was supposed to be the key for his room. She then led him to a corner of the hall where he saw multiple thick vines cascading from the top. According to her, with a single tug of these vines, he would get launched up into the upper floors of the municipal treehouse and lead him directly to his room. He declined, revealing that he could simply fly there. "Ah, if so, then you can simply fly directly to your room from the outside." He was just about to follow the receptionist when something caught his attention from the corner of his eyes. He moved back into the room of elevator vines and looked up, and for a brief moment, he saw what seemed to be a child hugging one of the vines at the very top of the tree, looking down at him with curiosity. He looked up at the child, noticing something weird with her. He was far away from them, but for a brief moment, he felt a sense of déjà vu as he looked up at them. We lost her. Damn it, Lady Farron is going to kill us. I can't keep up with her. And she's supposed to be fragile because of her sh. His attention was immediately drawn to the group of exasperated elves as they bursted through the door, barely hanging onto their breaths. They only stopped to notice his existence. Then, they lowered their voices before they quietly began their search for the missing child. Was that her, he wondered. He didn't know why she was hiding or why they were searching for her. But they don't seem to be doing a very good job. They split up and searched through the first floor, neglecting to notice that she was actually hiding at the top. It seemed they thought she was too fragile to be doing those sorts of acrobatics. "Sir Keo?" the receptionist asked, wondering why he wasn't following her. "I'll just go up through these vines after all. It's more convenient." He looked back up the vines, noticing the girl's absence. He hoped to talk with the little girl and take her back to Lady Farron. That way, he could gain her appreciation and hopefully increase his chances in his missions. But not only that, he also felt a strange familiarity as he remembered the girl's visage. He was sure he hadn't seen her before, but something about her presence was familiar. Taking one of the vines into his hands, he wrapped it tightly around his wrists before giving it a firm tug. Immediately, a powerful force yanked the vines upwards, taking him with it. He rocketed up the gargantuan tree's bark before his momentum suddenly changed from a vertical force to a horizontal one. He felt like he was in a reverse water slide. Eventually, the vines slowed down into a crawl as it delivered him into a hallway filled with rooms on both sides. His room was the very first one on the hallway to the left. But instead of going there, he went towards the opposite room on the right. After all, this was where the girl was hiding. He saw the light mana emanating from her body. She was leaning on the door, trying to hear what he was doing. He knocked, startling the little girl. "Hello." The girl was silent. "I heard those guys looking after you." After a few seconds, she replied, "Don't tell them. Farron will scold me. I didn't do my exercises." As it turned out, she was just a delinquent student. "Well, it's not good to renege on your studies. It's important for kids. You're just a kid too." He was silent for a second, realizing that she was right. "Ahem, I'm still right. But it's so boring. You wouldn't understand. They just make me do all those exercises even though I don't need them." She exploded. "Maybe I'll get out. If you give me a gift." His eyebrows raised. "A gift? Yeah, you're a human, right? I heard that human kids aren't just given bows as their birthday gift. They're given real toys." "I want a toy." Michael was flabbergasted. He thought she was in trouble. But in reality, she was just a bratty kid. It made him hesitate whether he should help her or not. "And why should I do that?" Because I'm going to die." Michael turned somber at the little girl's macabre confession. For a second, he was remorseful of his cavalier attitude. It was just a small favor. What a contemptible man he was if he didn't feel even a small pittance of pity for her. But in the next moment, all those emotions were washed down the toilet. "Really? I can see you doing a handstand right now." He saw the mana outline of her body through the wooden door, and she didn't look the part of a sickly, gaunt, and dying little girl. She propped herself up using her hands, with her feet vigorously kicking and dangling in the air. He could even see her making faces at him through the door. That lying brat. "Hey, how can you see me? Is this the human magic that Farron keeps telling me about?" Michael crossed his arms, indignant. "I'm not talking to a liar." "Well, I'm not a liar. I'm Lyra." He shook his head, exhausted at dealing with a boisterous, lying, glib-tongued brat. In hindsight, he shouldn't have believed her. She was able to firmly cling onto a vine hundreds of feet up in the air the first time he saw her after all. No simple child could scale up on such a slippery surface so easily, especially one that was on death's door. He even looked at her Tao heart and found it to be quite normal, albeit a little weak. But that was to be expected of a snot-nosed brat. But then, he noticed something. He squinted, using his supreme talent to peer through the mana composition of her body. The light mana that encompassed her stature was as natural as any other beastfolk. Those motes of white light bubbled and seethed with each movement, as if her vigor empowered the mana even more. But upon closer inspection, he noticed a few black spots lingering around the light mana. They popped up erratically, like spots on a white canvas that seemed to appear and disappear whenever you focused on them too hard. That was dark mana. Those black motes of light signaled finality, destruction, and death. "Wait, so you were telling the truth?" The little girl nodded. "Of course. Now, will you give me my toy?" Now he felt bad for doubting her. She looked good now, with her affliction seeming to have waned enough for her to live a normal, healthy life. But there were still remnants of her disease present in her body. As unfortunate as it was, her health was ephemeral and impermanent. "Fine," he relented. "But if I do, then you gotta do me a favor. You have to put in a good word for me to your Lady Farron." "Ah, I see," Lyra said with a chuckle. "I'll put in a good word, sure. I'll make sure to emphasize your generosity, good sir. But if you really want to impress her, then you should stop those vandals. She wouldn't have to be working so hard every night, so she'll have time for a date." "What?" "No, that's whatever. Just wait here and I'll make your toys." Exhausted after that laborious conversation with the rowdy Lyra, Michael searched for solace and comfort back in the room they provided for him. Dropping off the acorn key on the hole on the door, he entered inside and found a quaint single bed and a tree-style desk on the other side. This would suffice not as a place to sleep, but a place to workshop. Now, what type of toy would that troublesome girl like? I'm guessing she wants something that can't be found in the Elven Kingdom. Michael decided to go above and beyond that. He planned on giving her something that couldn't even be found in this world. After some thought, he could only come up with 2 items. One that a dainty girl from the suburbs would like, and one that a nerdy boy playing on the streets would like. Lyra seemed like she could fit both categories. Without further ado, he began creating a masterpiece of craftsmanship that an ardent collector of arts would deem priceless. A magic circle appeared in each of his hands, one emanating a pinkish color, while the other a cool blue. On the pink magic circle, cotton began to form and clump together, forming a bulbous shape similar to a snowman, with round ears and cylindrical limbs. Then, threads began to weave on its surface, creating a pink, fuzzy skin. This was a prototypical and non-copyright infringement pink teddy bear, complete with an adorable smile, rainbow eyes, and warm hands ready for a big hug. He even installed a simple voice box inside, spewing randomly generated responses like a real toy. Meanwhile, on the blue magic circle, an edgy cone formed using spare metal parts. The top, wider cone had flame-like shapes spewing outwards like spikes, and on the bottom, a sharp bit. This was a spinning top, made for intense, high-octane battles that would spew sparks upon contact and hurl opponents across the arena. He even made the appropriate launcher, complete with the rigid string and spinning rotor. Once these 2 toys were complete, he went back to Lyra's door and presented it to her with confidence and pride. The teddy bear's eyes lit up, speaking comforting words, and right next to it was the spinning top whirring in place. "See? How cool are these?" "Boring." Michael gasped, his heart broken. "What? Open the door so you can see them in action with your own eyes. You clearly can't see its true beauty underneath it." But Lyra was adamant in her critique. "Why would I want a talking teddy bear? It's just going to get dirty and get lost. And that spinning top, it's just going to stop spinning eventually." Michael scratched his head in wry frustration. Her reasoning made no sense. Of course the teddy bear was going to get dirty. Of course the top will stop spinning. "Is that it?" Lyra sighed, disappointed. Michael wanted to give up. If those 2 didn't satisfy her, then nothing would. Ding! Just then, his phone suddenly buzzed, alerting him of a message. And before he could even take the phone out of his pocket, "What is that?" Lyra asked, her voice suddenly filled with energy. Michael pursed his lips, his face consternated. "It's nothing." "No, that sounds interesting. Give that to me." Of course, he wasn't going to give one of his most valuable items to a child just because they said so. This cost 10,000 sand dollars. This went above and beyond to a simple gift. Heck, this wasn't even a toy. "Come on, if you give that to me, then I'll tell you about one of Farron's suitors." "He's a draconian." Michael perked up. Could this draconian suitor be the one that he'd been looking for, the one that possessed the second antique? That's why he wants to talk with the elves? He wants Lady Farron? It was possible. Only a love-struck idiot would exchange tremendous wealth, fame, and power for a chance that their unrequited love would get reciprocated. Did he just solve the mystery? Who is this suitor? It's just someone who always visits Farron. He's very persistent, but Farron just ignores him. Everyone says that he's some kind of big shot within the Draconians, but she doesn't care about any of that. That sounded exactly like who Bastine described. Was this whimsical Draconian actually a lovelorn idiot? Then again, Lyra may have been reading it wrong entirely. After all, she also seemed to be under the wrong impression that he wanted to have a romantic entanglement with Lady Farron. It was possible that she misunderstood that Draconian's intent as well. "Tell me more," he demanded. But Lyra demanded back. "Then give me that thing. It looks interesting." Michael stared at the phone in his hands, hesitant. Was he really about to be finagled by some bratty kid? This was equivalent to a single drop of sue. Some people were willing to sell their soul for this. But the antique was more important. Michael needed to find out what was on that second island. What kind of test would that obelisk task him with? What kind of treasure does it contain upon its completion? The fact that he got the Internet Cube, a curio with unimaginable power and unlimited possibilities, From the first obelisk made acquiring the second antique all the more critical. Damn. She's lucky I'm still rich, or else I wouldn't be this lax in giving away a phone. He slid the phone on the doorstep, and within half a second, the door blurred open and a pale, dainty hand snatched the phone inside. There. I gave you the phone, so tell me about this draconian. And before he even finished his words, he suddenly heard a camera shutter from the other side of the door. Kachik. Whoa. Amazing. It's my face. I'm seeing my face on this thing. Michael was stunned for a second, not expecting Lyra to be so adept at the phone, even though she was only using it for the first time. She even knew how to take a picture. It captures the world. The real world. It's genuine. I love it, she muttered with a moment of realness that Michael had only ever sensed from her for the first time. Michael paused. Hearing her heartfelt words, he didn't feel all that bad giving the phone away. But still, he had to get his money's worth. Now tell me about the draconian. He's. Just as she was about to say something, a slick rope being pulled taut echoed throughout the halls of the entire floor, startling Michael and the little girl. And in the next second, Michael saw a middle-aged elf land gracefully in front of him with the elevator vine still wrapped around her wrist. She untangled the vine before looking at Michael, surprise and shock written on her face. Michael looked at her with shock too. It was Lady Farron. Michael, Lady Farron asked, bewildered. I thought, then who's Kyo? Seeing the sight of a familiar elf, Michael should be relieved. She was the reason he came here in the first place. But he looked back at the door, no longer sensing Lyra's presence behind it. She was gone. She left as fast as she came, like a transient ghost whose only goal was to haunt and annoy him. She was real, of course. He wished she wasn't, so that he wouldn't have had to part with his phone. But it was still gone. Who were you talking to? Lady Farron asked, looking askance at the door. She seemed to have gotten a sense of who was there, as she pushed the door open and looked around, expecting to see someone inside. The room was empty, with all the furniture still left untouched. That brat, she muttered. I hope she didn't give you too much trouble. A little bit, he admitted. Who is she anyway? She's complicated. She's a deeply troubled kid. Reluctance shone in her eyes. She wasn't ready to talk about such matters, especially not without her around. He didn't press. After taking a deep breath, Lady Farron turned back to face him. Anyway, I didn't expect to see you here, Michael. Or is it Kyo? Please call me Kyo for now. I'm sort of hiding my real identity as the leader of the Reborn company. Lady Farron emphatically nodded. As a leader of an elven faction, she knew just how important secrecy was during these turbulent times. She would have done the same given the chance. I planned on visiting you in Metropolis, but the circumstances didn't allow for it. I still haven't thanked you properly for all that you've done for me and the elven community. Michael backed away, feeling burdened by her respectful bow. It's nothing. No, if I had known it was actually you, then I would have made you my priority. The Vandals, the lunar celebrations, the human and elven factions, I would have ignored all those problems to show you our utmost sincerity. Please, there's no need to be serious. Like I said, I had an extra compound bow in hand, so I gave it to you, and you also gave us your darkwood, so we're just even in that regard. Lady Farron's eyes suddenly shined once he mentioned the darkwood. Speaking of which, let us talk about the darkwood you have sold us recently.